Welcome to the American English Cafe, and in this lesson, I'd like to talk about how not to learn English. So, the first thing is that in the American English Cafe, we teach communication. And if you're thinking grammar, you're not communicating. But if your grammar is not perfect, I can figure out what you're trying to say. So, the purpose of language is communication, not perfect grammar. After you maybe could score an IELTS of 8, then you can learn about some of the more obscure points of grammar. But a lot of what foreign teachers call grammar lessons is not grammar at all. They take some phrase out of context and it's really meaningless. It's not how people communicate. So most EFL, English as Foreign Language, courses teach what they call grammar, but no child ever learned to speak by studying grammar. You learn to speak by listening and by repeating, mimicking the sounds, and then learning to practice and put words together. The important thing in English, if you want good grammar, it's good to speak in complete sentences, but much more important than grammar is good pronunciation. So, the first rule about how not to learn English is to lack confidence and to tell people, oh, I cannot speak English. If you tell that to yourself, then you will not learn to speak good English. Say, I am learning to speak English. Believe in yourself and just have confidence. Learn from your mistakes. So, the first skill in learning any foreign language is listening. So, the sounds, different languages speak and use different inflection and stress and rhythm and have different pronunciation of the same letters. So the first thing is to learn to listen very closely. And then every language learner, no matter what language they're trying to learn, complains that native speakers speak too fast. And so in learning English, I speak slowly so that you learn to understand. And then once you understand, you can speed up and you can understand watching a movie or listening to a native speaker without slowly translating in your head, trying to keep up with what's being said. So, the second skill then in learning a language is repeating. Pronunciation and vocabulary are much more important than grammar. So, if your grammar is not perfect, I can figure out what you're saying or ask you to explain. But if you don't have the words or if your pronunciation is too poor, I cannot understand. We cannot communicate. So I teach American pronunciation. My students have proven that mouth exercises and exaggerating your pronunciation is the key to learning, to being understood. First, I call the sonants, a word you probably never heard, but these are the voices. There's about 20 sonants in the English language. Ah, a, e, ah, o, oo, I, ow, r. So these are the sounds made by A, E, I, O, U and in combination with each other. And especially some of them change if they come before the letter R. So the letter R is very important in American English. So the third skill then is reading. And by reading, you read the whole sentence and don't look up in a dictionary. Try to figure out what the words are saying. Try to figure out the meaning from what we call the context. What is being talked about? And so, what could that word mean? If you memorize words and listen and think that you know what the word to means, well, does that mean go to the store or buy 2 pieces, or would you like to go to? So many words in English depends if it's the verb or the noun form, and if it's other words that have completely different meanings but the same pronunciation, or the same spelling but different meanings or different pronunciation. That's why we need to learn whole language and not focus on some small point of grammar that you'll just slow your thinking. So look at the overall story. What is the story about? So the fourth skill then is learning to think in English. Instead of translating, learning to think in your brain in English instead of translating slowly. Translation is slow, and people have different ideas and convey them differently, so there's not always a good translation. So the final skill then would be writing, and I suggest just practicing writing as soon as you know, and grammar makes for an easy lesson plan, but contributes little to communication. So the important points of grammar are just the basic is word order. In English, the word order is usually subject, verb, object. Every language is going to have a subject, what you're talking about, a verb, what is happening, and usually an object, who is the receiver, or what is the receiver of the action. So English is only about 1/3 of the languages have subject, verb, object, but that's very important. Most languages are subject, object, verb. So let's take an American and English sentence, and just for example, John went to the store. So that is subject, verb, object. The subject, object, verb would be John, store, went. And the object, subject, verb would be store, John, went. So you need to know what is the word order in your language, and have to realize that in English, it's generally going to be subject, verb, object. And the modifier, the adjective, or the adverb is going to come before the word that it describes. In English, I would say black cat. Most languages would say cat, black. And so basic thing is that there are 3 tenses. You need to learn 3 tenses: past, present, and future. If a teacher is trying to teach you 12 tenses or 16 tenses, I suggest you stand up and walk out and find a new teacher. That's confusion. You don't need to learn 12 or 16 tenses. You need to learn Did it happen before? Is it finished? Is it happening now, or are we talking about the future? And then learn the basic for verb tenses. And regular verbs would end in an ed to say it finished. And then we can learn the list of the common irregular verbs. And plural. Most things are we talking about one or more than one? If it's one, we call singular. And if it's plural, regular plurals, we would add the letter S or ES. But irregular plurals, we need to learn. There's some very common one. One tooth, two teeth, all my teeth. One mouse, many mice. Okay, those are the basics of grammar. That's really all you need to know to speak English. So the main things with how not to learn English are, don't look for an online teacher in your native language. If you're in India, I'm afraid learning from somebody in India is not the best way to learn. Look for a teacher from Britain or America or a native language where they speak English. And memorizing vocabulary lists, there's no pocket in your brain to try to remember a word out of context. So when I'm learning vocabulary, I try to think of a picture or relate that word to something that I know so that I can remember it. And so don't study vocabulary lists. Don't try to learn phrases. American English in general, is in complete sentences. That's the important part of grammar. And trying to learn phrases, or every language learner generally will start out with introductions. Hello, my name is, well, I taught in Thailand, and in Thailand, everybody can speak 6 words. I'm fine, thank you, and you? And that's all they can really confidently say. I had a colleague with a master's in English, very proud of his degree, but I could not understand his pronunciation, and he didn't know how to speak in sentences. So, as you can see, studying grammar is not the way to learn to speak English. So, if you have questions, I suggest that you just think about how did you learn, and learn to listen, and then practice speaking, repeating. Watch a movie, not one time. Watch the same movie 10 times with subtitles, and read and repeat. Talk back to the movie. Learn songs, and then related vocabulary from the words. I like the Carpenters and Westlife. Have good vocabulary and good speed and easy to understand. Titanic is one of my favorite songs to learn English. So, thank you for visiting the American English Cafe. Leave your comments in the comments below.